right away. And like I said, that's why I was interested about the camera too, because once my future son-in-law moves down, he's a techie, and he also he worked for Best Buy and Geek Squad. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna go shopping in 2 weeks and get him to. So I can't get the desktop yet, but I can get a camera. And I can certainly get the microphone. I didn't want to get it for today because I was like, well, then it'll be obvious that we came back, that we're doing this.
The sound is completely different.
Yeah,
Yeah, we do. That's smart because we do have to go back to what we used at the time.
Yeah.
Which is good because that'll make it sound essentially the same. Keep all the levels the same. Because I'm actually using, I think I told you I'm using GarageBand for the podcast editing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through and I'm doing a lot of research and I'm learning about what people use for podcast editing. Nobody uses GarageBand because you just don't think about it. It's not designed for there's no reason to do it just audio.
Right.
And there are lots of other options, but GarageBand happens to be the thing that I'm used to using. And it works. I can clip it. I know the system.
Right.
But there's a little piece that I haven't figured out. I lost 15 minutes this morning trying to figure it out. Like, how do I have the volume down? I don't want to crop the audio. I don't want to cut anything out because that's just going to skip ahead too fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to cut out like a cough mute. I want to just mute the Kip Cobb played in. If I cut out the it sounds so much better.
Yeah.
And if I cut out 47 ums, who cares? He probably listens to it and goes, wow, I sound really great. But then I realized I got to do the same thing for myself. I'm like, did I know that I said, 7 times in half an hour? Well, and I hate it when people do that.
Well, perfect. And that's a great one too, because, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, you're too young. Ralph Sampson, you remember the basketball player?
No.
He was 7'4". He was, you're too young. 1981. He was probably the number one recruit in the country. 7'4". He could move. He was going to be the next best thing. Went to the University of Virginia. So he's a fairly intelligent kid. Well, they interviewed him as a freshman and they counted the knows. And in a 15-minute segment, he might have said, 200 and some odd times. It was unbelievable. And they went and interviewed him as a senior, and he had really cleaned up his speaking ability. And it's true. You hear, or in today's word, like, I want to take that word and throw it out.
I had that conversation with my wife. I'm like, Colette says like 3 times every sentence.
Yes.
Do we care? We're sending her on job interviews and we're saying, go get your internship. And she's going to graduate Duke next year. So very smart child.
It's not like it's the education.
It's not an education problem. Yeah. And it's not like she grew up in Southern California. It's just that age.
It is.
And I told Jovi, I'm like, I can't say anything. We don't have that relationship yet.
Yeah.
I've known her less than a year.
It's funny. My daughter, because she knows I'm very conscious about it, even when she's with her friends, she'll clean up the the language and the vocabulary. Yeah? But she's been doing it on text lately, and it's like that. Now it's getting way too ingrained.
No!
And
You're
it's
typing in the like,
typing in the word like. It's like no, there's no need for that word. And, and it's funny, when I started in a law firm, I always laughed my ass off because I didn't know. I wasn't a paralegal. I wasn't a certified or anything like that. But I could write, and literally, I would get the lawyers' briefs and everything they were about to send out, and I had to proofread for everybody. And the word that they used was that, because they're speaking, so they're trying to emphasize. So I would go through and just circle the word that. How just it was abused by attorneys because they think they're speaking. So I want to emphasize that. No, you don't need it. It goes a lot smoother when with the word that. So it's generational, but I had an English teacher for a mother, so.
So you're aware of it as well. Okay.
Oh, she drove me nuts. Absolutely drove me nuts.
I don't know. It's something clicked with me. I was 7th grade, and it was the teacher.
Yeah.
And they were discussing, there, and your, and all those, and all the differences, and making the comment saying these are the mistakes people make because they sound exactly the same.
Yes.
When you're speaking, nobody says you said it. You said your instead of your. Nobody hears that. But when it's typed in, and I know plenty of people, extremely intelligent people, that you can tell when they type those things, all of a sudden we were working on their project, THRE. Like,
yeah,
you're a 187 IQ guy.
Right.
And that doesn't click. It's just like an unimportant thing for them. And now that we're recording and doing these things, we're just hypersensitive to it. I was talking to my wife this morning going, wait a minute. Did I just say the thing did I just say,
you know,
did I just say, like
fills time, fill space,
Well, and there's the other thing within the recap. And as I'm cropping things out, silence is okay. The problem is, I think people are so used to waiting for their turn to talk.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as there's a space in time, as soon as there's a pause, somebody's going to jump in. So we get used to continuing the line of my sentence has to keep going. So even if I go, all I'm doing is keeping the stage. I'm pointing out that you're not allowed to talk yet.
Right.
Because I'm still making sounds.
I'm getting territorial.
Yeah. Hoping nobody jumps in and starts talking. And you hear that. That's one of the reasons why I like the video, even while we're just doing audio, is that we can see each other.
Absolutely.
And especially I like to gesture as though I'm Italian. I'm not, but I gesture a lot. So it also, I can kind of hold the space as well to say, I'm still talking.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that we can do with body language and how that is. With 3 people, it's tough.
It is. But that's the fun of it too. I mean, that's why it's a little bit more laid back, because it's a conversation and you're going to speak over each other from time to time in a conversation. That's okay. I think we've done a good job as far as the questions. I think the questions are important. I think the questions set the stage. It gives the person a comfort level walking in, that they know they're going to have something to speak about.
Yep.
And it's all good. And we'll continue to get better. And as COVID goes away and we get better at it and it gets more, we'll make a point where if it's a Sunday afternoon or a Friday afternoon, we're going to, we'll get together and knock it out over 2 hours in one spot. And that's what we got to do.
Yep.
It's just part of it's hopefully, the idea is this is going to be more lucrative than 3 hours on the court.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. So you could sit there. It's like we've always said, don't go by hours, go by big picture. So this is a big picture move.
Yeah. And the catch is we need to I'm keeping myself focused on that. I'm doing this anyway. I'm not doing it because there's a financial end goal. I'm going to do it with a financial end goal in mind, but that Absolutely. It was not like we sat around the fire, had a beer, and I don't drink, so that's just a strange thing. It's a figure of speech, but sat around the fire and said, okay, how can we make money?
Right. No, I agree.
Okay, here's our best way to make money. If so, we would have started a church.
Yes, exactly. You're right. And I had somebody in college say, hey, I will support you to be a motivational speaker. I said, no, I can't do it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah?
Cannot do it. And she's fairly well. She was the head of the Gates Foundation. She's my most famous, I'd say, classmate from TCU as far as where she went. She was brilliant. She was so much smarter than me. But I have the inbred charisma a little bit, and she was always mesmerized. But she went on Gates Foundation, Harvard, PhD. She's something in this Department of Education now. Stephanie Sanford. Just
okay.
Just really cool. But
yeah,
I'll pay you. No, really, no. Thank you, but no, I can't do it. I'm not that interested.
Sounds great.
I can't sit there and tell people how they're supposed to live their lives.
Well, there's part of the problem is a lot of people. That's what I call rule number 2, is do not help someone without their permission.
Yes.
It's rule number 2.
Brian Shepard posted something on Instagram, but the problem with people's listening is that while they're listening, they're also preparing an answer rather than listening before they prepare the answers. And
waiting for their turn to talk.
Yeah, waiting for their turn to talk rather than truly listening is, again, that's wisdom right there. And that's the kids are raising their hand before I haven't finished speaking yet. How could you be asking a question?
Yeah. Yeah, ready to go. And my father, I struggle with that with him because he's always looking to make a joke.
Yes.
So all he's doing, and this is just how he operates, all he's doing is listening to what you say and figuring out how he can interject with something funny. He's not really actually, now he's smart enough to kind of catch what you're talking about. So he can still hold the conversation, but there's a background process running for him that's always going to be, how can I take what you've said and make a joke?
Right.
And at some point it's, hey, Dad, I need you to really pay attention, focus, and I don't know, maybe think about your answer without just jumping in with something stupid.
Well, and you'll find if you have kids, it gets even worse because you don't want the kids to be like that. My mother's the same, not so much a joke, but she listens to turn the conversation towards herself. She'd come up something anecdotal.
Selfish with it.
Yeah, always about her, or always trying to make it bigger, more grandiose. Em will come home and relay something that happened in school, and she'll co-op it and make it her own and tell about a story. That's not why. Most of the time, people just want to get shit off their chest. They don't need your affirmation or your story to corroborate what they just said. They just want to release. Give them 5 minutes to get it off their chest, and we could probably all be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Rather than having to say, oh, I know. Yeah. Same thing happened to me in college. And then 10 minutes later, we're still talking about me.
Exactly. It drives me crazy with her. So
I'm completely capable of that.
Yep.
Because plenty of great stories. I'm sure a lot of people have them, and I can relate to people, and people like to be related to. But simply going, "Ooh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about," can keep let's keep you going. Let's get to the end result. You need to get something off your chest. Is there a question in there somewhere?
Is there a question?
The other one? Are you asking me something specific?
Well, we want you to interject. That's the good part. But like you said, let's listen. So when we interject, we come with our best story at the best time.
Yep. Exactly. And that's a lot of that is practice.
Yes.
A lot of that is practice because it's a little different from, I'm trying to remember who I said it to recently, but it's the political point of view. It's don't answer the question that they've asked. Answer the question you wish they had asked.
Yes. Turn it. And
it's, I'm going to answer. You know what? That's a great question. But what I really want to talk about today is our energy grid in Texas.
Yes.
Wait a minute. That's not what I asked you. I asked what was wrong with your hair.
Yes. How did we end up? They said Ronald Reagan gave the same speech 1,000 times in the, up to the lead up to running for president in 1980. So he started running for president back in 1976. So in 1980, and this was before the internet, so you can only imagine they'd have to get a little more creative today. But he literally, it was a stump speech. Hey, I'm going to give the same speech.
And that's back when that worked better.
Yes.
Because you do it in Atlanta and only people in Atlanta would hear it. Then you do it in Chicago. Then you could get away with that. Today, you do it wherever you want and everybody's already heard it.
They've heard it.
So they're just looking for the energy. And that was one of the things former President Trump was really good at, was kind of saying the same thing, but a little bit differently and getting you fired up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like him or not, he was really good at that.
Oh, he's charismatic. Yeah, I can't stand it, but you can't hold against his what he's good at. And he was just so out of the box to what we're used to as well that
everybody freaked out.
Everybody freaked out. Absolutely.
Yeah. What did I say? I made a comment in the interview with Kip. It was actually beforehand. It's just when you and I were warming up, and it was really in the beginning there. And I was talking about we're arguing about the facts. We're arguing about the numbers and I heard this and I heard that. And I made a comment about it's often what happens in the political world. And even listening to it again, I'm like, I don't even want to say the word.
Yeah.
I don't even want to open it up to have somebody go, oh my gosh, I know. Did you hear that? I don't even want to have anything to do with that. And I thought about it, and you were good about not going down the political road, just understanding that was an example.
Yeah. Well, it's true. You read, I don't participate, but I do read because I want to be aware of what's going on around me. And the way things are co-opted on Facebook, something is written and somebody pulls something out of it, and all of a sudden we're going in a completely different direction. And unfortunately, using Trump as the example, the question always, well, Trump's so bad at it. That wasn't the question. It was about a particular candidate. How it always comes back to, is Trump really the measuring stick? Is that what? Because here's my biggest line that I cannot, again, I just sit there and as a Republican strategist, I would sit there and scratch my head. Go back. John Kennedy, who in perception is one of the more liberal presidents. Now, reality, he wasn't, but perception, he was, hey, civil rights, everything so new for his time. What did he ask? What ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Mm.
That's not an endorsement of big government. And here's your liberal poster child. I'd be throwing that in, I'd be hitting that button every day if I was a Republican strategist. Wait, let John Kennedy say something here. Boom. But they get caught in the minutia.
Yep.
This week should be Ted Cruz. What were you thinking?
Yeah, talk about bad optics.
Oh my God, what were you, in a world in which did you really think you were going to sneak to Cancun? Oh my God. Just unbelievable.
Bad idea. Date created. And ATP podcast. Yes, but where are you? I do this all the time. You create something, I'm kind of doing two things at once, and then I go, all right, great. Where'd it go? It's gone. I know it's not. It's just somewhere else. Show enclosing folder. You told me you put it in text edit. Nobody stores anything there. That's a ridiculous place to store things. I'm getting to the point. Are you sure you want to move it from iCloud Drive? Yes, I don't need it there. So I am going through the intro and outro, which is the goal of today's meeting. So I recorded this. Tell me if you can hear this.
I'm hearing nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay, so I wonder if I can play it. If I play an MP3 on my computer. I was playing it. I was just running through it in GarageBand. Because in the beginning, what we might do is record whatever we can record as perfectly as possible. Oh, that's fun. Even I can't even hear it. We'll record it as perfectly as possible and stick it in where we need it, keeping it as generic as possible. Yeah. I wonder, open with, it's one of those learning curves. I need to figure out what you can hear and what you can't hear. And if you're only hearing the mic in, I need to pull back out and be able to play something like one of the podcasts I know, being able to play something live in the show. Mm-hmm. Yes, no. Okay, that's all AirPlay. Nope, that's not letting me hear it either. And general doesn't give me the ability to play it out. Play, pause, volume, and move to that. It's not going to play. It's not going to sound there. All right. We'll worry about figuring that out later. I wonder if I can take the microphone and change it in Zoom so you can hear me through. This will be interesting to hear. We'll go through the camera. So sound should have changed.
Yes, it did.
For you? Okay. Yes. Better or worse? What do you think?
Worse.
Okay. So we put that out of the way. In a hole. Okay. That's good to know. It's the GoPro has good sound capturing ability. I was actually surprised in the convertible it could pick up a conversation with me and Joby, but it's not clean, pretty, nice sound. but at least it picks it up. If I put the phone in front of me in the car, all we hear is.
And that could be the biggest problem, comparatively speaking. The other sounds so good. This would sound more as if you were in a studio, more space between you. But when you speak on that mic, you're crystal clear.
Just needs to be direct. And I got this as a gift. And when I was researching it for you, I was like, man, I hope the thing's not $800. I was really, really happy that it was $35.
I was shocked.
And I'm doing a lot of podcasting research and a lot of live streaming and studio research, and really haven't found a camera that'll do much for less than $400 or $500. But to find a mic like this, now I can't plug this one directly. And the reason I sent you the one that I did, it's this exact mic, but it comes with a direct USB in.
Gotcha.
You can go straight into your computer. I've got to go through an external sound card. So I've got a separate little fancy thing that plugs in, because I can also plug in the piano to it as well.
Gotcha.
So I've got other things that I do with it, but this is fantastic for $35.
It's amazing. That's
stocking stuffer money right there. All right, MK, are you playing? You're not playing? And this one. Where's the audio out? I can't hear it. I can't even hear it.
You can't hear it either? Yeah, I can't hear anything.
No, I could hear it in GarageBand. So let me just try it that way. And we'll try to play it again. So if we go back. No, because it's sending out the sound through my headphones. Project export. So maybe if I turn off that, so now I should be able to hear you through the monitor.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So now through the television, I can hear you.
I still can't hear you.
You can't hear me now?
I can hear you speak right then. Yes, I can hear you.
What's going on? Okay. Well, in this case, it's not microphone, speaker. It's still sending sound out through my headphones. I don't know why. What if I go in, you unmute your speaker? I don't care about that. All right, one more try, and then we'll move on. And
test.
No?
Nope, can't hear anything.
Oh, now I can't hear you at all. All right, we're moving on. Moving on. We are going to go back to what we know works. Basically, I recorded what says, this is the Atlanta Tennis Podcast. Every episode is titled, It Starts with Tennis and Goes From There. We talk with tennis coaches, club managers, tennis industry professionals, tennis technology experts, and anyone else interesting wanting to have a conversation starting with tennis. And I just recorded that as perfectly as I could.
Okay.
And then it's its own file. So we can drag it and stick it in where if we want to start with that and then do our bumper music and then we move on to welcome to Atlanta Tennis Podcast and Sean and Bobby talk, and we hope you're interested. So the other question is if we can record in two different ways. I'm still on the GoPro sound, so I want to be.
Now you switched.
Now we're back.
Yep, you're back.
To the fancy, extremely affordable.
Yes.
Whatever you call this thing, microphone. The R2D2 TK421 3000 microphone coming from Amazon. There we go. All right. So, did you read through the intro concepts? Like, did you read through any of the stuff that I had kind of pre-written that we were thinking about, or did you have your own notes, your own thoughts? Where are you on opening and closing the show?
I just, again, we spoke about it. I think just wanted to interject a little bit more of ourselves in the beginning, a little bit more ourselves in the end. That's it. I thought, don't want to make it too much longer because, as you said, they're going to start turning off. I like the idea of having the standard intro. Being a guy who watches these things a lot, because really that's all I watch. Standard opening, standard close is the way they do it, and most of them are always asking for subscribe. The tagline. I think in the beginning that's begging. In the end, it seems it's a much more natural flow to sit there and say, hey, if you like what you've heard, follow us on blah, blah, blah. Keep abreast of what's going on, especially as the future goes. I do think because again, these shows are very driven by responses. I think that's the other part that you see is, make sure you comment. I never comment, so I can't speak to that, but that is one thing they always ask.
Yeah, we want that interaction.
Yes, exactly.
So
you want them to feel ownership in it. If
you're watching us live, and that's one of the podcasts I listen to, they have a live stream when they do it, and then they do a post-production. They do 0 video.
Right.
They have a live stream, and they've got a chat room with 600 or 800 people in it at any given point. And then actually the way they use it is kind of fun, is they use it as real-time fact checking, or to be able to say, what was the guy's name in the movie? It was 1970.
Somebody will type the answer in.
Tony DiNozzo in the chat room is going to be able to come up with the answer.
All right.
Oh yeah, thank you. NCIS, but yes.
Yes, NCIS.
But that's the fun part of saying, hey, if you're live, let us know you're there. Say hi. If you got a thought on what we're talking about, we'd love to adjust and chat with you. And that's the fun part about doing it live. If we need to go back and pull it down and cut it out and put it back up, we can, but we'll just know we're live and know not to say certain things.
Right.
I think there's only one time where I think you mentioned a member's name in a story and then said, now, would I tell that member's name during the story live? No. And I'm like, we're technically live. And that's just habit. It's just practice of knowing what we can and can't do. Thinking back and be like, did I throw in the F-bomb there at the end? I think I need to maybe not do that. I know we can. It's not illegal or anything, but we could skip that. Just because as we go back, we're going to clean it up and we're going to put out the 15-minute podcast. But that doesn't mean we can't have an hour and a half online. We can't have the long form conversation or somebody else popping in going, oh, you know what? I found this thing. Yeah, we'd like to pay you guys to do this full time. Well, if anybody's listening, I'll say possibly yes.
I truly believe that's the future of television is going to be more and more interactive. They've been trying to do that. Shoot, I was in Hollywood 30 years ago. And trust me, it was being kicked around. I laughed. The guy I worked for, he used to read essentially what is creative loafing. You remember for the weird section? There was I was in LA, so it wasn't creative loafing, but he would go through the newspaper and literally cut out the most outrageous things he could find because he knew at some point he wanted to go back and these were story worthy and of interest. And look at the reality TV boomed. It's cheap because you don't have to pay people. You don't have to pay writers. You don't have to pay. So it's a production cost is way down. And now take it a step further and you can have interaction with people. Ask the next question. You tell us what you want to know.
Yep.
Obviously, we've exhausted we took our 15 minutes. Does anybody out there have a question that they'd really like to ask? Boom. Ask it. Now's your chance. Have a conversation with Jimmy Connors. Have a conversation with Yvonne Lendl. Here's your 5 minutes. Go for it. And obviously not 5 minutes, but here's your chance. It's there. The technology is there.
Yes, but is my password there? Why do I not know my password? What happened?
This is amazing to think about. 10 years ago, there was a multi-level marketing company that was trying to do this as far as the video component, and it was so poor compared to this. Is amazing where you're on sync. There's no feedback. You're having a conversation. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The people who grew up with it don't appreciate how far it's come in such a short period of time.
Oh yeah. This is magic to us, but we've also watched everybody try and fail.
Yeah.
We've watched the old version. I've done things like this with Frankensteining together pieces and USB to HDMI. Like HDMI was just magic. Like one cable for all of it. That's fantastic. All right, what would the password be? I'm trying to get to the drive, and I'll just have to skip it because I can't think of it to get it from the other computer. All right, so intro meaning Sean with Atlanta Tennis Podcast. Every conversation starts with tennis. We're in the Rejuvenate studio, and this episode is. Before that, do you want a? Do we want? And with me is Bobby. And we're recording. We're in Atlanta. That's why we call it the Atlanta Tennis Podcast. Bobby is blah,
I do
blah,
think
blah
that's
about you.
Yeah, I do think. Well, should we do it once about art, or should we do that at a different point? Should we do a 15-minute you and I backstory?
Sure, because we can always reference to it and say, if you want to know more about me and Bobby, go back to episode 1.
There you go. I think that's probably the way to do it.
We should call it episode 0.
Episode 0 is the introduction, your background, and I think again the interesting part is the diversity. I don't think it limits out. Again, it starts with tennis. Here's tennis, but the reality is, if I had to define myself, how would I define myself? I'm a father and now a grandfather. That's how I define myself. My full-time job is.
Did you say now grandfather?
Yeah. My stepdaughter, 22. She had as a 1-year-old baby boy.
No kidding.
Yep, and they're moving here.
That.
So Wednesdays are going to be Wednesdays with Papa.
All right.
So yeah, I'm going to.
I don't remember knowing that. So late congratulations. That is.
Oh no, and that's the beauty. I mean, we
fantastic.
did not have a really strong relationship when I was married to her mother. We've both sat down and compared notes and realized how much her mother weaponized her and tried to create the problem. And she, in fact, was the big problem. And even my ex's family laughs about the relationship now. And they all have the comment saying, well, we know who the real problem was now, because everybody else seems to get along. The one that everybody has a hard time with is the ex one. It's like, okay, but no, it's been great. She's been very forgiving. I asked for forgiveness because certainly I did a lot of things wrong. I didn't know. I always knew she and I could be close because I'm good with kids. I listen. So I knew that would never be an issue, but I really felt that her mother and her need to have a relationship. And I thought I needed to solve the mother conundrum before I dragged somebody else into it. And I never solved the mother conundrum. So we moved on, and she has a baby boy. And with her background, it could have gone one or two ways. She could have been great because she's been waiting her whole life to love something, or she could have been horrible because she didn't get the love she needed. And she has been amazing with this child.
That's awesome.
Great with him. So we have a great time. And they're actually, as I said, they're moving down here in 2 weeks. So
from where?
They're in the Nashville area. He went to Middle Tennessee State, her fiance, and he just graduated. He's a little older, but he's 25, but he just graduated undergraduate, and he just got a job with Ryder, and he's doing remote work. But ultimately, if the world goes back to somewhat normal, he will have to report to Wynwood Parkway. So they've moved. They're going to move down here, and she's wanted to come home because this is obviously where her friends are too, and he has half of his family. His father lives down here, so he has family down here as well.
Okay.
So they're coming literally 2 weeks, March the 6th.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, and he's a trip. The baby is huge, but he's got such a gentle presence. He started daycare, and they take the video, which is awesome. And you just see him approaching all these kids, and it's kind of mesmerizing. You just sit there and watch. Like, he really has a really gentle side to the fact that he is essentially baby Yui. He's very big.
Oh yeah.
His real grandfather, his blood grandfather, is 6'8". So we're expecting, I mean, Katie's dad is really, really big, tall. So we're expecting him to be tall, but he's just got a really gentle presence about him. So it's fun to watch.
Nice. Yeah, closest thing I have to that is a couple of weeks after I got married, I was having a conversation with somebody out playing tennis or whatever it was, and Jovi was my new wife was with me, and we're still kind of in that honeymoon phase. And I looked up and I'm like, yeah, we got to get out of here. I got a 20-year-old at home.
Yeah.
It's a little strange. A couple of weeks in.
Yeah. You already got it.
Just got married and I already got a 20-year-old at home. I move fast.
That's right. If I'm going, I'm going all in.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's, as you said the other day, I guess I'm an uncle, or I guess, technically speaking, yes, you're an
Yeah.
uncle. So
Yeah. I got a very large family all of a sudden.
yeah.
I have 6 brothers and sisters-in-law, not including my brother's wife.
Wow. So there you go.
Yep.
Yeah. My father was one of 6. My mother's an only child. My brother is 8 years younger than me, and he's single. So half of the family and my father's family didn't really speak to each other. So I have cousins all over the country that I'm connected, but I see one of them really.
Okay.
I'll see, and that was pretty much growing up too. There's one of them I hung out with because we were the same age, but the rest of them, we know they exist, but we don't see each other very often.
Yeah. I know that feeling a little. I've got pretty much most of one side of the family that we're close to, and the other side we see every once in a while.
Once in a while.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Which makes things interesting family-wise. Something I heard recently of, I think it was I don't know if it was a tarot card or Chinese prophecy or something about being the year of the snake and 2021 and what it means for me. Something about a new family member.
Right.
All right. I'm like, oh, new family member this year. My wife looks at me. She's like, I'm like, oh dear.
That's not the one I was thinking about. But
well,
yes,
I'm thinking this year, huh? Well, I got a bunch of new ones last year.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody was expecting me to get 30 new family members last year, but it happens.
Yep.
It could play out that way. So I wrote down quickly episode 0. I like this idea because we can refer to it. Say, hey, look, we don't need to go every episode. We could do a quick. We'd have to have that quick, like I did written down. Sean with Atlanta Tennis Podcast, but I don't necessarily need to say Ankle Biters extracurriculars. I'm not worried about promoting the other things that I'm doing. We could,
yeah,
but I don't know that it's worth the time every time because people are either if they want to know about me, they can go check me out. I'm not hard to find.
Right.
You're probably harder to find information about just because I've got multiple websites and I've got a bigger online presence.
Yeah, we're going to have as ultimately, again, as we've discussed, if this thing does take off, I will have to get better at that. Just really do it through this platform because, but I do have some people on Instagram that would be interested to know, and I think I could grow the presence directing it to this. I have nothing to say personally. I post the occasional picture just to let people see that I've aged a little bit and more up until this point. Let's see, Emily Rose, she's a year older. So, we put 2 pictures up of our Disney trips each year. So everybody can comment and feel like they've seen me and okay, we can move on now. But
yep. Yeah. See you much in that. I think I have, let's see, Bobby Schindler. What did I put in? With me as always is Bobby Schindler. Did I put in specifically? No, not in that introduction that I wrote saying, which I could easily say, with me as always is Bobby Schindler, who's currently the director at Windermere Club in Cumming, Georgia, which we could just throw that in. We could just do that every time. It takes an extra half a second.
And I think we should, only because of the fact that's our credibility. I think you need to speak about Ankle Biters for 2 seconds. Again, we will discuss it. I think it's a great idea to go back and do an introduction to us.
Yep.
How did we get to this point? Because that's part of what we ask other people.
Why are we here?
Yeah, why are we here? So if we're asking that of other people, there should be some reason that we have told this is why we feel that we're here. And be fairly, it's a good opportunity to be a little more. I mean, the good part was a conversation about tennis that prompted to take this step. So we've had so many conversations where we've laughed about different things about what tennis has done, where we finally sat there and said we should do this and try to take it to a different level and get more people. But I do think each week, just what we're doing right now, just from the president, with me, president of ERS tennis director at Windermere Subdivision in Cumming, Georgia. Boom. That's all you need to know about me.
Okay. And ERS Tennis has no web presence?
Not anymore.
That's essentially your LLC?
LLC, yes.
You as a business? Okay.
Yes.
Just so I know, because I've got the same thing. There's no reason for me to talk about 233 Group LLC.
Right.
I mean, we run a DBA as Ankle Biters.
And if anybody asks me what ERS is, it's my daughter's initials. So that's where we came from.
Emily Rose Schindler. There you go. Okay.
She was, when I did it when she was 8, she was very excited about having a company named after her.
Okay.
So,
yeah, we went back and forth. It was when I was discussing doing some business with a guy named Calvin Kemp.
I know Calvin.
Okay. I was running something at GGC for Chase. He was running their academy or something there where Chase was not, I guess, relatively new. Chase wasn't there completely running all the programs and kind of doing everything himself. He'd brought in Calvin to do it. And we were discussing having Ankle Biters Tennis create a feeder program where we'd run potentially not just, we weren't even talking about 10 and unders at the facility.
Right.
We were talking about putting Kemp Tennis on our marketing in the preschools and in the elementary schools and try to get them to, when they graduate out of Ankle Biters, go to their facility.
Sure.
So he wanted a feeder program with that, not like Windermere where we're doing the feeder program there rather than going into the schools specifically.
Right.
We had a slightly different approach. And one of the things we were talking about, he was working on his logo for Kemp Tennis Academy or whatever it was. And I asked him very specifically, I said, why'd you pick your own name? Out of curiosity. Because I chose not my own name. I actively chose to not put Sean Boyce or anything related to that, or my initials, anything, because I had a scalable concept in my mind from the entrepreneur point of view, I guess, that I pictured it as, if it's Sean Boyce Tennis, somebody's going to walk in and go, I'd like to talk to Sean Boyce Tennis, please. Where's Mr. Sean Boyce? And if I'm not there, the thought is that they're not the guy.
Right.
But if it's, PDQ Tennis, you don't walk in going, who's PDQ? Like who runs the place? Who's in charge here? ERS Tennis, run by Bobby Schindler. Can I do the math and be like, all right, he didn't name it after himself.
Right.
Okay. Well, maybe you invented it. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you bought it. Maybe you started it. Maybe you just run it. Maybe you're just a guy that happens to work there and your boss's 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 boss. His name is Emily Rose.
Yeah.
But Calvin was specific from a tennis point of view that in the academy world, the name was recognizable. You wanted a recognizable name. And I think back to the big academies when I was a kid in the Atlanta area, and they were big names of famous people.
Well, but they were famous. Exactly. There's a difference. Calvin, you're not that level.
Calvin wasn't famous. And I thought, I don't know that's going to, I don't know if it worked for him. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but is that the thing? Like, do you have the name? Like the Jim Courier Tennis Academy is going to do well, but I'd have to call Jim and ask him if I can use his name.
No, you're not using it. You're paying. There's the difference. There's the Rafa Nadal Academy, because he was coming to Atlanta. He wanted $10 million to license his name. Yvonne Lendl had the Yvonne Lendl Tennis Academy in Charleston. It was a money deal. He would fly down 4 days a month, hang out, and he was gone again. He wasn't running the Yvonne Lendl Tennis Academy, but it was his name, and he got paid for the use of his name. And Nadal's the same way. He's made it very well known. For $10 million, you can too run the Rafa Nadal Tennis Academy. He has name recognition.
That's a big number.
He's worked for it.
I'm not saying he shouldn't get paid for it. I just don't know. I'm not in a position to say, well, yeah, if I go to the bank and I say, I'm going to borrow 10 million to give to Rafa.
Yeah.
So I can use his name, and you're going to make your money back in
3 minutes.
How long is it going to take?
Yeah. To
make $10 million with a tennis academy. Those are big numbers.
Tennis is horrible as far as sponsorships and name recognition. They've done it completely all wrong for so many years. So, and they're about to have a comeuppance because you haven't had stands. Look at last week, Australian Open announced $78 million loss.
Really?
During the 2 weeks that they're talking about how they're going to recoup it and everything else, but they lost $78 million not having fans in the seats. That's a big number.
Meaning in general, or just because of the 5-day lockdown? Or did that just make it worse?
It made it worse.
Okay.
They were losing.
They might have lost only $50 million or something.
Yeah, they were losing, but they lost even worse because of the lockdown. But
they were running it. But they were running it anyway, knowing they were going to lose money.
Knowing they were going to lose money, with the hope of long term. Do you sacrifice the year to? I think for $78 million, the answer would probably have to be yes. I would sacrifice the year.
Well, that's up to your sponsors. I mean, if I want to keep going with the event, that's great. It's never my money. The guy running the event, it's not his money. It's the sponsors. And if they pull their funding saying you're not going to be able to pay us back this year, it's not your choice.
Well, but a lot of it is the federations. It's the USTA runs the US Open. The USTA is the one who wins or loses, but they're still, it's not Cadillac or whoever is name on the mantle. It's the USTA is the tournament director. They're the one who's going to lose the money. The sponsor could come to you and say, listen, I want it to go on, but there's no way I'm giving you this bottom line because there's nobody walking through to see my car.
Right.
And
that's what I'm wondering. Like, Cadillac's not going to come in and say, here's your 20 million. They're just not going to give you the 20 million.
Exactly. They might give you two,
I don't know how you continue. Yeah. I don't know how you continue to run it unless the USTA is borrowing money to pay Cadillac. And I haven't figured that out. Like if the money's not coming in from the sponsorships and that's how you're paying people and you assume you're going to pay them back, or they want 20 million to do a thing, are you paying the sponsor? At that point, I'm like, wait a minute, how do you do this from a financial point of view? If they're going to sponsor you and you're not letting fans in the door, are you just assuming that the guy in Nashville watching the show is going to buy some 1573 Asian wine?
Oh, you're moving a lot of eggshells. Oh. Pushing it down the road. You're pulling out. I mean, because the reality is USTA's budget, the only thing that makes money for the USTA is the US Open. The memberships don't pay for what the USTA is. The only profitable thing the USTA does is the US Open.
Really?
So if you're not making the numbers that the USTA is projecting, where are you making the cuts? And long term, again, now that we've seen it, are sponsors going to, it's always funny. A couple of years ago, especially here, Truist, what it was BB&T, they were going for a cost. It's Truist now. It was the BB&T because now Truist, SunTrust and BB&T got together. Cadillac was a sponsor. Then Lexus came in, and Lexus paid a ridiculous amount of money for that sponsorship. Well, this backstory was the Japanese earthquake a few years ago essentially brought production to its knees. So Lexus suffered mightily for a couple of years, then needed to get back in the market. So they overpaid to get back in the market once production ramped up again. Now Lexus is back operating, though they just had another earthquake last week. So it'll be interesting to see long-term effect again. Mm-hmm. And you have a pandemic on top of Lexus. It's not affordable. It doesn't translate. We needed it back here. We were willing to take a risk because we needed to reestablish ourselves. We're moving again. Word of mouth is good. We're not going to recoup the sponsorship. We're out. Cadillac comes in, renegotiates, and they're going to be a sponsor of the Truist again.
Okay.
It's not going to be at capacity rates because you're not going to have capacity this year.
Sure.
So it's interesting. Most, and the other big thing, and I'd love never having been an owner, don't know any. There's got, especially the big sports, there's personal wealth there. There's family wealth that if the team loses, well, you lose money that year. Everybody gets paid, but your net worth, the last few years, the valuations on these teams have gotten so great that they're all corporations. They're operating on not how much they bring in, what are they worth if you were to be sold. Guys have made $30 million. I mean, when we looked at doing the NBA expansion franchise in Mexico City, 1992, the asking price to get started, and this was to operate, we asked investors for $40 million. That $40 million, 28 years later, so that's 4 cycles. So let's say 80 million, 160, 320, 640 million. Just if you go normal multiples, I don't think there's a basketball team worth under $1 billion today. So that 40 million 28 years ago would have been a hell of an investment. But it sounded like a lot of money in 1992, what we were asking for.
Yeah, still does to me.
But it's, franchises are all in the billions.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So there's a lot of eggs getting moved, a lot of coconut shells moved.
Big numbers. We're looking for our first listener.
Exactly. Good news is we know it takes, again, Oprah. Why is she a billionaire? Oprah, that's what Oprah did. Oprah went into Chicago, bought the airtime. She wasn't getting paid. She bought the airtime. They went in and sold to sponsors. And that's why Oprah became a multi-gazillionaire, because she wasn't getting paid. She did it herself. And for no other reason, I will always, if for no other reason, you always will admire Oprah, because she believed in herself. She had a great concept and she took the risk. Therefore, she deserves a reward.
Sure. Yeah. What did I see the numbers on Elon Musk or something? He made $190 million selling his piece of PayPal. And he put 100 million into Tesla. He put 70 million into SpaceX, and he put 20 million into something else. And now he's in the billions.
Yeah.
Like what was the phrase? And he was borrowing money for rent at the time or something. Like he put his money into the next things.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, I'm out, I got 190, which a lot of people would do. I don't know how hard I would work once I deposited 190 in the bank. Like that might be my number to get out, or I might get bored enough to keep doing this.
But I do think, and this is Mark Cuban, same way. He'll tell the story of his origin story, that he said, anybody who's with me when I sell the company, and my goal is to sell the company within this much, everybody who's been with me, whether you're a janitor, whatever level, you're walking out of here a millionaire. And he wrote checks to everybody that started with him when they sold for at least $1 million.
Really?
But he also will tell you that level of person is so motivated.
Yeah.
So as we've discussed, and we'll edit this out, Jordan Peterson, that they're such the anomalies, that they're the outliers to every statistic, that these guys are so motivated, so brilliant. And because they're so motivated and they're work 60 to 70 hours, and as they go further into it, they get more efficient. The Bezos, the Gates, that they're working 60 to 70 hours to begin with, but they do it so much better than everybody else that their equivalent is working more than 100 hours a month or a week. But they're so good at it, and they've reaped the reward. Hey, more power. I enjoyed that world. It was easy. I rely on them to give back, yes, but I think we should reward that kind of effort, because not everybody's doing it. Like you said, how many people would get to a point? Now you don't get there, but how many athletes? This was my big thing when I was in Texas. I was always amazed how many college football players played college football out of the state of Texas. So therefore, the natural assumption would be that most players must come from Texas. Well, that's not the truth, because most of those Texas players, their big goal was to play at either University of Texas or Texas A&M. When they reached that goal, they were done. They had reached what they wanted to reach. Tom Brady was the Mr. almost irrelevant, one of the last draft picks. He was going to make the world pay for being making him a 6th-round draft pick, where Ryan Leaf, the 2nd pick of the draft, who was supposed to be the second coming, went to jail because his goal was to make the NFL, get a paycheck, and thought he had reached the level when he made the NFL. Tom Brady said, oh no, this level keeps moving. I'm 43. I want to keep going. It's a different personality. It'll be interesting, but like you said, I think they do go hand in hand. I don't think you can separate yourself. Those guys who are that successful and don't quit, that's why they were that successful. This is their nature. They are the outliers.
Yep, absolutely. And the question is, can we be?
Yeah, why not?
What's special? I mean, we're always looking for the next thing, but in this case, once we find something like this as an example, let's assume this is the thing. And let's do it to the best of our ability. And let's focus on it, as opposed to, I've got a history in my life of having a great idea and kind of getting it started and then just kind of never talking about it again. And just never really bothering to follow through. And that was my biggest problem, was just doing all the little work, doing all the homework, so to speak. You know, it was my problem in high school. I graduated high school. Never missed a test question.
Right.
But I never did the homework.
Right.
So you're not going to get all A's because homework is part of the deal. And I didn't realize what I was learning. What I was training myself to do at the time was understand a concept and move on, as opposed to understand a concept, do the good work, and make that concept ingrained and really strong, well understood and strong in my own mind, rather than, oh yeah, I get that. What's next? And that's what I was training myself to do. Oh, I get it. And that was next.
But historically, and again, this is a difference in today's world because you see the internet, the technology wealth was created by young people because they were in it, had been in it their whole lives. Again, it goes back to the talent overrated, the 10-year thing. Historically, entrepreneurs made it in their mid 50s because it was accumulation of knowledge, it was accumulation of contacts, it was an accumulation of resources that the idea that they finally followed through on, not only did they follow through, they had the means to follow through and do it properly.
Yep.
We've lost that in this country a lot just because technology has created, it's happened so much sooner. It's like it expedites the discovery of how to cure COVID. Well, it's done that on every level. It just makes it faster. We have a computer processing for us instead of our mind. The computer works a little bit faster. So you get there a little bit quicker. And that's in every, but historically, the classic entrepreneur was in his mid 50s because it was the right time and the accumulation of everything you need to be successful. And the realization and knowing that, hey, you got to put some time into it.
Yeah.
The thing is,
there's a maturity that has to happen first. And I know quite a few people that did all the right things young and were very successful young and still are. And those are, again, some of those outliers, especially with the technology of how easy it is to jump into something early and make $100 million.
Sure.
And I don't say easy because it's impossible to predict. The guys that I know that did it guessed right, so to speak, or believed in something that we all look back and say, I should have bought a few Bitcoin back in the day.
Absolutely.
But in this case, I was thinking about it, talking to my wife about it. And it was, I finally have I could look at someone and go, I can do a podcast. No problem. I've got everything I need right here because of the years of collecting stuff and practicing and all of my little half projects and all the songs that I never finished, but I've got all the files, and I know how to use Garage. Like I can do that. And between the two of us, and I say, especially you, with the people that you know, with the people, the contacts and the friends that we've made, we've done a good job of not burning a lot of bridges and not being pariahs in our own industry, to be able to say, hey, we've got a new thing. We'd love for you to be a part of it, and have a few names that might be able to send a tweet that's going to bring in a few listeners.
Absolutely.
And be able to say to each other, what's interesting about this? Because if you bring in a 22-year-old that's been teaching tennis for 6 months, I'll be honest, they could be a great coach, but they don't really understand the industry. They haven't been around enough. They don't know what's really good or really bad about it. That doesn't mean we know. It just means we have our opinions and we've got some data to back it up.
It's got a little more data.
So we've got that history, and that takes time.
Yes.
And that takes being nice to people around you, which took me a while to understand that actually that person one day I might want to call them. And so, hey, let's do a thing together, because you were really good at this thing back then. But if I was just young and dumb and picking fights and burning bridges, I can't make that phone call anymore.
And think about what you just said and why it's so appropriate for tennis. Tennis has got a big young people problem. Tennis has always had a big diversification problem. Is that part of the responsibility, part of the blame go to the leaders who were too selfish, who said, I know everything, I'm not going to listen. I always laughed that the USTA goes and hires the latest CEO at Wilson as the new executive director of the USTA, and sit there and go, well, let's see. He was at Wilson from 1997 through, so racket sales decreased how much, and tennis ball sales decreased how, and we're going to give him a better position because he had the, and I think tennis has been historically terrible at that. They've been always last to the party as far as changing, adapting to their environment, and taking the next step. where
a bit reactionary.
Yes.
Like I see all these, what was it? I just did a Parks and CTA diversity and inclusion webinar, and it doesn't seem that we were saying, hey, let's get in some young people. Let's not have just a bunch of old white men teaching tennis now. Yes. But we only did that when it became smart to do that.
Yeah.
It was reactionary to the last 10 years of societal shifting, rather than, you know what, we don't have a lot of young people here. I compare it sometimes, and my mother and I'd say argue, but argue is the wrong word. My mother and I discuss this a lot because she's in an industry, she competes with sheepdogs. So she travels the world herding sheep in a competitive nature. So she raises her own border collies. She trains them. She sells most of them, but she will train them to do a thing. But she also trains other sheepdog people.
Right.
Sheepdog people. I have to figure out what that's actually called. other people in the sheepdog world that will actually one day compete with her. But she's still at the top of the game. She's still top 10, top 20 in the world at what she does. But it would be like Roger Federer training a 22-year-old to beat him.
Yes.
Where Roger's still competing. Roger's in that world of, I don't want you to know my secrets. I don't want you to know how to beat me because I'm still competing. You and I aren't making money competing, playing tennis. So if we create the next great player, we're not putting ourselves out of business. We're not. So we're sharing all the knowledge. But if we done that as coaches, if we done that with the younger generation of coaches for fear that they will be great and take our jobs, have we been willing to? It was one of the things I loved about the culture at TPC Sugarloaf at the time. I don't know that it's that way now. It's been 12 years. But at the time, it was about part of the job being to train the next people to, not your job, but if I'm the head pro, I train the assistant to have another head pro's job at another club.
No question.
But the other pro isn't invested in that. I don't want some young kid coming in taking my head pro job. It took me X years to get here. And in directors, if there are a lot of young directors, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was the culture that Wilson came out of, because back in the day when you were there, Wilson as the director, he had come out of the farm system, essentially, where you went to Atlanta to get your next director, which was Country Club of Roswell and Cindy Jones. Cindy Jones was the stepping point. You go to Cindy Jones, go work, and then you were, because that was the reputation. And there was a while where you looked around Atlanta and okay, look,
everybody
Wilson
came through Roswell.
That was her. That was, and she was great at it. And she might be a great person to talk to. Why did she get out of tennis?
Yeah.
Because why did she go into financial services? She was the gold standard. Hey, come work here. And I'm going to, part of coming to work here is 3 years from now is somebody's going to offer you a director's job because you're going to have learned the right way. And that, that was the reality. And like you said, you were there for that.
That was about the culture. Because I felt good. I felt like Darryl Lewis was invested in my future.
Absolutely.
And I felt like Billy Ewells was invested in my future. Whether he liked me or not wasn't the point. Because I was an outside of the box kind of guy, and a Billy was a straight-laced, here's how we do things kind of guy, which is what you want in a head pro.
Right.
But I was young, and I'm like, well, why do we have to do it that way? We can do it this way.
But that's okay.
Billy
You're supposed to ask questions.
His whole job trying to rein me in.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't hey, all right, Sean, what's your crazy idea that we're going to say no to? Go ahead and bring it up. It actually created some conflict. Yeah. But that was me being young, not me being outside of the box. Being outside of the box was okay.
Yep.
But I still felt like he cared about what was my next thing. He cared about making me a better tennis pro, and Darryl specifically. And he was the one that came to me and said, hey, by the way, Sean, you've been here 8 years now, and you're clearly not putting in the work that you're supposed to put into to go be a head pro somewhere. Do you want to go be a head pro somewhere? I said, no. He said, all right, well, I'd like to see your resignation on my desk.
Yeah.
So he actually let me go because I wasn't on the career path, and he wasn't just going to let me hang out there as an assistant pro forever.
Yeah.
So that he was so invested in my tennis pro future that he fired me. I mean,
that's interesting because Darryl, you know what Darryl's doing now on top of.
Isn't he selling sunscreen?
He's selling sunscreen. So he listened to you. He had an entrepreneurial side that you were probably tapping into.
Uh-huh.
you were a torment to him, so he had to get rid of you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, Daryl's another guy selling sunscreen. So absolutely
looking for something a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I'll
tired
take
of worry
your
about
story.
knuckleheads like me.
Take your story about what you said about what you trained. This is the truth. From I don't think this is urban legend. A couple of years ago, maybe even a year ago, the USDA invited Novak down to Lake Nona, spend a day with their top players to show a Novak day of training. And like you said, for half the side said, "Well, Novak, you're crazy. Why would you go expose what makes you special?" So they went, they did it, and the people watching Novak sat there and said, "Well, why does he do that?" And you sit there and scratch. Let's see, he's number one in the world, going for Grand Slams at a record rate. You're trying to get there, and you're questioning him.
You're worried about why.
You're worried about why.
You're asking the wrong questions.
And he turned around and said, and the answer to Novak was, "I knew they wouldn't do it."
Yeah. Okay.
Because they want to believe that their way is better, their process, or they didn't believe that he worked more off the court than he did actually hitting a tennis ball. And he knew that. He knew in his heart of hearts that, hey, I can show them all day long. They're not going to do it.
Interesting.
And so far, he's been right. Why has the next generation had such a hard time overcoming the big three? They
also don't seem to get worse. They don't seem to get old.
The three, their process is incredible.
There's a catch there because they're now in maintenance mode. Like, I'm already here. Here's what I'm doing while I'm already here.
Yes.
You guys aren't even close to being here yet. You actually need to be doing something else.
Yes.
So I can show you what I do. But that's like me saying, well, here's my CEO job. Would you like a job in the mailroom? Right. Well, I need to know what you're doing so I can get there. Well, that doesn't help you, because knowing what I'm doing now doesn't help you at your current job. So I would guess the training that Novak does isn't even going to be the same for a 16-year-old kid thinking he's going to make it on tour. Yeah. Another reason why you might be a little better off sharing some of the secrets. I can't convince my mother. And again, she's competing in that way. I said, but you can tell them all the secrets. They're still not going to have the maturity. They're not going to have the experience. They're not going to have what you have. They're not going to have your dogs.
Right.
They're not going to have your training facilities. Teach them all you want. Teach them all you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And charge them a lot for it. Charge a lot of money.
Yep.
I can't get my mother to raise her rates. I'm like, Mother, double your rates.
Exactly.
Double your rates. Well, then, I mean, most of these people are my friends.
They'll still be your friends.
They'll still be your friends.
They'll still be your friends.
And some of them might not take lessons from you anymore, but you need to double your rate. Like, you're how good compared to everybody else?
Look at the company.
World-class instructor charging $50 an hour. Mother, come on.
Yep.
You can charge $1,500.
Yep, exactly. And I love that about one thing from watching Shark Tank. And when I watched it, I was always amazed because I say I'm very good when it's tangible. I loved when Mark Cuban would look at a product and say, the guys were like, well, we want to mass produce this. And he'd look and say, why? You have the diamond in the rough. Position it as a $1,500 product, not I'm going to make more money by making, because now you have to make at $50, you got to do it 300 times as opposed to, or
the initial times. Investment is tougher.
As far as what, he would position it. He just had a different way of looking at it and say, look, I'm going to position this as a high-end product.
That's a first to market point of view.
Yes, exactly.
I'd come out with a new television. You don't need to sell a one to everybody. You just need to sell 100 of them to the wealthiest people that can afford it, and use that money to make your next 100.
And Trevor Short will be a great person to speak to, and God bless him. And he's your age, probably even younger.
Yeah.
Started as a college player. His dad was a college coach at tennis. But this guy has always been about, I know I'm a good tennis coach. And he worked with me at White Columns, and I laughed when he quit. I said, Trevor, I hope you know you're the reason why I'm going to get fired. He felt terrible. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, because Trevor, they now have the impression that this should be working here. Not that you were a friend of mine who was looking for something to do, because he is that hyper motivated, got to be constantly busy person while you were putting together the next thing. And it was true. And well, where's Trevor? Well, you're never going to get another Trevor. Instead of looking at me and say, like you said, well, what's Bobby's strength? Building relationships. So Bobby's going to be able to find you that guy. And that's one thing that goes on well at Windermere. Whether you like me as a coach or whatever, there's one lady who sits there and goes, he knows everybody. Do you think you would get this if he wasn't here? Trust me. This is, he can talk to anybody in the business because he listens to them, and they'll listen. They'll do all right. But most people don't. Most people are more selfish, more, how does it directly affect me? Not looking big picture. Look at Disney, look at Coke. I love Coca-Cola as a company. They start looking at a Sean Boyce when he's 25 and say, this guy's a little sharp. Let's put him in an advanced management program. Okay, he did really well. Let's put him in the next advanced program. Whether or not you leave your job, you're just getting continuing education during that time, because they want you to know that we value you. We see something in you that we want to continue to invest in and to see where it goes. And they start grooming their CEOs. Well, there's only one CEO. So if you have 25, 30 people that are on this CEO track, that means there's going to be a lot of disappointed people. But they keep everybody.
Or you're going to forward them out to another company, and all of a sudden,
because you have that, it's like a Harvard.
You're the Country Club of Roswell of soda companies.
Exactly. And and when you have,
I'm sure Coca-Cola's always wanted to be that the Country
Club
of Roswell of soda companies.
Look, think about their stocks going up again in a time when soda
is bad for you.
Consumption is gone down.
That?
It's horrible, and it's still a thriving company.
Yeah,
because they continue to reinvent themselves. They go in different directions and learn. They bought Monster. Okay, we've had Monster. We own a good piece of Monster. We're coming out with our own high energy performance drink. Well, if Coke puts their name on it, I don't care who you are,
you win.
That's tough to overcome. That's a brand. Apple, look at the culture.
If anybody from Coca-Cola is listening, by the way, we don't mind calling this the Coca-Cola Tennis Podcast.
Exactly. Apple, Walt Disney. I love these companies. PayPal, new company that I want to come up with specifically. Again, how do you create a hedge fund that is tennis? I want PayPal. I want Nike. I want Walt Disney, because that's where all the pros go to. That's their happy place. And just call it, this is the Jock Fund. All tennis-oriented funds. And sit there and go, really? Why? Honda, because everybody drives an Odyssey on Thursday Alta.
Yeah.
There it is, the official car of Alta. Mercedes
exactly.
Big bucks, go to a parking lot. It's the Odyssey.
Yep. Yeah.
It's the Odyssey, but
that is true. It's like, guys, they're not buying your Mercedes.
They're not buying the Mercedes.
They gotta go sit in the carpool line after their tennis match.
It's 2:30. They have to be in the carpool line. Know your day. You're exactly right.
That's where our yard signs need to be. The carpool line.
Well, again, it's sad. You had it right, but you dealing with bureaucracies are never easy. The schools should have embraced you with open arms, and they didn't. And it just
quite a few did.
But and somebody who had and this is what I think a lot of people cut themselves short as far as, if it doesn't happen soon enough, hey, you got to make decisions on survival. A lot of people have something to be able to hang on a little bit longer, which is a nice freedom to have, to sit there and say, I can fail. Most small businesses can't fail once. They don't have the ability to make the adjustment or learn from, be able to apply what they've learned, because hey, we ran out of money. We ran out of resources.
Yeah.
Where a lot of these companies that make it to that next level survived. Hey, and that's great. More power to you. Learn. But
we were nominated for a Pivot Pro Award from the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Ankle Biters Extracurriculars was because we were shut down.
Right.
Middle of February. We were done.
Yep.
And because all of our business was in the schools, not all, 90% of our business was in the schools.
And the schools are closed.
Yeah. And my wife and I invented 4 or 5 new businesses and new things. 2 of them made sense, right? 3 of them actually made money, but that was about it, but one is going to be one pays the bills, and the other one is Rejuvenate, and it's on its way. Like, this came out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we all make our adjustments. I've got to go check the tennis courts because the sun's out.
From the high school a little earlier, I said, listen, it's drying, but if you need to make a decision right now, call it.
Yeah, I canceled at 12:30 and got a text from one of the parents of one of the groups saying, "Hey, it's sunny.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get together in person." I said, "Look, I'll check back at 3."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice here to be able to say, "All right, we're calling it. We're going inside. Here's the Zoom link. We'll see you at 4:15." But if I can get to them at 3:00 and say, "Hey, just kidding. We'll see you on the tennis court at 4:15." They're going to love it. They're happy about it because it was, we went to plan B. It's not like you called everybody and canceled a big event, or canceled your lessons. And then you have to call everybody back. Or it was 15 years ago. So once you canceled, you were done. You couldn't get everybody back. They went on to something else. But since we still have the 4:15 scheduled, because we go indoors into the studio and do the online Zoom call with the kids, they're still planning on being there.
Right. The time is still,
it's not actually canceled.
Right.
Just bring your kids to the tennis court now.
Yeah.
So we don't lose it again.
No, it's true.
So that was a new thing that just now we're probably about to experience for the first time.
Yeah.
Which is, you know what? You guys are still planning on 4:15. Let's still plan on 4:15.
Because we're going to be there. We'll be there.
Yep.
Yeah, I just got word too. We're going to go on. He's going to give it a shot. So with high school,
okay.
Try to practice. So, all right. So we didn't finish exactly what we did, but we're getting our process down.
Yeah. Let me do some writing.
Okay.
And I'll send that along and we'll narrow it down and we can set that up whenever we want. We can get the content with Jovi on Wednesday.
Right.
And we don't have to do the introduction. I'll walk through it and I'll run through it, but we can make those adjustments and we can do the outro as well separately. Even if it's just you and me afterwards to specify it. The other thing I'm going to try to do is test the microphones, because if we're going to have Jovi in the podcast, I'm going to have her mic'd as well.
Right.
And in that case, I won't be using this. We'll be using other microphones. So I've got some testing to do because that'll be the first time we do another in-person conversation.
Very good.
So I'll be in touch tomorrow and then we'll hopefully I'll have all that ready by 1:30 tomorrow.
And
or 1:30 Wednesday.
I'm going to take a look at what we've done just to get a feel.
Okay. And I've got some bumper music, just some clips and things that we can put in the beginning. It doesn't have to be great right now. That'll evolve with the show.
Absolutely. I agree.
Nice little intro.
Very
cool.
Good, sir. All right. Enjoy your day.